If you're like me, you might have questioned your skill level in HEMA or historical fencing at one point or another. Now, one way to measure your skills is comparing yourself to other fencers in your club, at events, or elsewhere. Well, I think it's very important to wonder where you stand in any martial arts. Why not turn to historical fencers in the true sense of the word and see what they have to say about the matter? If you want to learn what one specific Austro-Hungarian officer had to say about the matter, stay with me and see you right after the intro. Hi, I'm Peter and welcome to the History and Sabre Suites, the channel where I talk about HEMA, history and swords. Today's video is about different skill levels. Why do they exist? Well, everyone starts out as a beginner and works their way up through training. Now, most of us do this as a hobby, so it's not quite the same as, let's say, a military officer of the 19th century carrying his sword on the job. Nevertheless, I still assume that each and every one of us likes to see improvements in their various skill sets and improve as fencers overall. That was, of course, also true for the military officers of old, one of whom I'd like to introduce to you today. The man I'm talking about was József Baratonik, and in 1904 he self-published in Hungary a book called Ratgeber für den Offizier zur Sicherung des Erfolges im Zweikampfe mit dem Sabre, or in English, a guide for the officer to securing success in single combat with the sabre. Now, in his book, Baratonik touches on all relevant aspects of sabre fencing, such as psychology, fitness, and the history of fencing as a whole. But it's still not a fencing manual per se. It's rather his contemporary take on fencing and dueling. But who was this József Baratonik anyway? Well, after some research, I found him listed as a cadet in February of 1883 in the 25th Hungarian Infantry Regiment, according to the Schematismus, the annual Imperial Army list. Already a year later, although still a cadet, he was listed as a deputy officer in the same regiment. Over the next 20-odd years, he had an admirable career and rose through the ranks. In 1904, when he published his book, he was an Oberleutnant, which corresponds to first lieutenant or lieutenant in the British Army, depending on the branch of service, or first lieutenant in the US Army. I can promise you now that I will come back in future videos to József Baratonik's often stream of consciousness-like literary effusions, but for now let's focus on what he had to say about different skill levels in fencing. In chapter 8 of his book, he talks about 3 different categories of fencers. Now, if you recognize yourself in one of them, be sure to put a comment down below and tell me about it. I'd be interested. Now, the first category is fertige Fechter, meaning complete fencers. Complete fencers, and I'll be paraphrasing closely here, are only those who have been through thorough and systematic training and then exactly follow the rules of the system they practice. They exhibit no flaws whatsoever in their basic skill set and through years and years of training have become well-versed and experienced fighters. Now, going further, to qualify as a complete fencer, they must also be currently active fencers who train almost every day, do not only fence within their usual circle, but regularly participate in public fencing tournaments and academies in major capital cities. They don't only partake in Klassifikationsfechten tournaments, but also the pool. And they must also win not only medals, prizes and honorary diplomas, but also earn public recognition. Okay, now let's see what the second one is about. 2. Unferne Fechter, or let's just call them incomplete fencers. This category includes those who have also been through thorough training at some points, but are not currently active and therefore more or less out of shape. Others in this category might have had good training as well, but never mastered the more difficult obstacles of the system when they were active, and as such, they still have some elementary flaws in their technique. Whatever the case may be, most fencers of this category do still follow the proper rules of fencing for the most part. So far, so good. Now let's get into the thick of it with category 3. This one's called wilde Fechter oder Raufer. In English, wild or impetuous fencers or brawlers. This category is really just a variation of the incomplete fencer. The difference between them, though, is that they don't follow the principles of fencing precisely because their only goal is hitting their opponent as much and as often as possible, without consideration for how or why it happened. They don't follow the rules because they might be out of shape or they dread the work and effort it takes to master proper technique. For this reason, they only seek to improve their basic mechanical skills rather than learning and applying the principles of fencing through experience. And now, here it comes. They are the anarchists of fencing. He goes on as follows. They think there are no rules for them, and they're only interested in learning how to hit, no matter the cost. They want results from as little effort as possible. How? They don't care. Their motto is hit, hit, hit. As much as possible. Because as long as I'm doing that, there's a chance of hitting a more highly skilled fencer than I am. Now, if they hit me as well, it doesn't matter. Because I'm just going to hit them harder, so my hit has more impact than theirs. If they hit me in the head, I'll just hit them in the stomach. And vice versa. Now, as I said in the beginning, if you're anything like me, I'm sure you had someone in mind for each of the categories. Interesting, right? Now, what can we take from this? For one, I just think it's fascinating how much we can learn about the finer aspects of HEMA once we look just a little bit further than the actual fencing manuals and sources themselves. Another important aspect I personally take from this is there's no need for absolute perfectionism in HEMA. There were good, mediocre and bad fencers in history as well as today, and why should it be any different today? Each and every one of us gets to decide what kind of fencer or instructor they want to be. But let's not forget that these categories are the private opinion of one individual who wrote them down 116 years ago. There were certainly many similar as well as contrasting views at the time, and we should never forget to be critical when working with historical sources. Now, I'd like to open up the discussion to you, and I invite you to put your views in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like, subscribe to my channel for more similar content in the future. Thank you so much for watching and see you soon here on the History and Sabre Suites.